This is On the Ground with Med Global, Episode 1. I'm Rush Darwish. Gaza. It's not a war zone. It's a genocide in motion. Innocent civilians are being targeted with over 30,000 Palestinians murdered and countless people severely injured. While politics drives the news stories, doctors and humanitarian relief groups are having to face the pure devastation of relentless attacks and a civilization that has been reduced to rubble. With very limited pathways to serve Palestinians who desperately need medical attention, Med Global is one of the medical relief groups who have a station in Gaza and are on the ground.
When you see half of the injured children, and you see children everywhere, and then you talk with people and each one of them lost a son or daughter or maybe the whole family, or I saw a doctor who lost 99 members of his family.
Dr. Zaher Sahlul is no stranger to entering catastrophic humanitarian disaster zones. As a president and co-founder of Med Global, he and his team of doctors and nurses have been in Syria, Ukraine, and have served Gaza multiple times prior to October 7th.
So every child I ask in Gaza, what would you like to be in the future? They say doctor. Except for one child, which speaks about the mental health trauma that you mentioned. He was 11 years old. He was in a displacement school, a school that was converted to a displacement center. I asked him, what would you like to be in the future? He said, what future? So that kind of shocked me.
On Episode 1 of On the Ground with Med Global, my conversation with Dr. Sahlul as he gives a raw, intimate look during his recent medical mission trip to Gaza. Dr. Sahlul, welcome to On the Ground with Med Global. And I have to ask, for someone who has led so many medical missions, how do you define a humanitarian disaster when you arrive to that area?
Well, thank you for having me, Rush, and I'm really happy that we are discussing this very important and timely topic, which is the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. I think to answer your question, you would know that this is a humanitarian crisis when you see it. And you don't have really to go into numbers to recognize that what's happening right now in Gaza is the worst humanitarian crisis that the world is witnessing. There are probably some benchmarks and parameters. In terms of disasters in general, they're divided to 1 and 2 and 3. 3 is the most complex, where you don't have only large number of injured people and death, but also you have destruction of infrastructure, and including hospitals that are supposed to treat the wounded. So that's what's happening in Gaza. It's a complex disaster where you have large number of people who are affected.
This is obviously a very tough question. You went to Gaza, you and a team of doctors. We know it's bad, but if you were to assess the biggest challenge right now in Gaza, what would that be from a medical standpoint?
It's difficult to wrap up your mind on what's going on in Gaza. I've been in Gaza before 3 times, starting in 2019, in medical missions. So I am very familiar with the landscape, very familiar with the area, the cities, the villages, the hospitals, whether it's Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City or Kamal Adwan in Beit Lahia, or Turkish Hospital or Rantisi or Nasser Hospital in the south. Diversity of people, the cuisine, the welcoming attitude that you see from the first enter Gaza, the beauty of people and their heritage and their pride and honor. But when you see, when I entered Gaza this time from Rafah border crossing through Egypt, the first thing that I've seen is tents everywhere. So we entered to the city of Rafah, which is the most southern part of Gaza, and you see tents filling everything. Every empty spot you have a tent of different color, of different shape. Some of them are of just nylon sheets because people don't have even enough tents. And in every tent you have 10 to 20 people, couple of families or 3 families together, a lot of children. And there's no electricity. So we entered at night, so there was no electricity in the street. And then we started to hear the sounds of explosions, not in the distance, but very close. So Khan Yunis, where the fighting and the bombing, the Israeli bombing was very close to Rafah, about 10 miles. Um, and then you see the impact of the bombing. The war is very close.
What kind of current impact from a mental health aspect are we looking at? And even the future of mental health, of the impact of this genocide, how would you best assess this, you being on the ground in Gaza?
Actually, I was surprised by the resiliency of the people in Gaza and the fact that they um, act sometimes as things as normal, like normal. So when you walk in the street, you see children playing in between the bombs. Um, you see families going to their business. We were in the Mediterranean. Gaza, of course, borders the Mediterranean Sea. So you see sometimes people swimming and fishermen fishing. Um, and you see the resiliency of the people, and sometimes they smile to you when they know that you are not from the area. When we were in the hospitals, the doctors and nurses were very helpful. But you know that beyond this facade, there is something that is very traumatic. When you talk with people um, who lost everything, many of the people who were displaced in Rafah, and there's about 1.2 million people who were displaced in Rafah, lost their houses, lost their neighborhoods, lost family members, lost their businesses, lost their normal life, and they know that they're not going to get it soon. And they keep losing it. People were displaced multiple times. So maybe in Gaza City or Jabalia, they lost 10 family members. Then they went to other place there, Al-Balah, they lost another one. Then they came to Khan Yunis, they lost another one. Then someone was injured, and then now he's dying or she's dying. So you have these very traumatic experiences to people. And I know that it will take generations to recover from this. This is trauma over trauma over trauma.
How do you best define it, Dr. Sahlul, when it comes to the future of the medical direction of Gaza? Like, how do you even define it as it is today?
I'm actually optimistic when we have a ceasefire, because the people of Gaza are quite creative and they went through disasters over the past 70 years and they recovered. They have an amazing healthcare system before this war. Almost all of it is collapsed or destroyed, but I think we have the ability to rebuild it, especially if there's international attention and resources directed towards the rebuilding of the healthcare centers or system, the hospitals and the clinics, and supporting the nurses and the doctors, and providing technologies that are needed. People are very educated in Gaza. Gaza has one of the highest literacy rates in the region, and people are resilient and creative. So that gives me hope about the future of Gaza when there is a ceasefire. I just want to give an anecdote. I have a habit of asking children in the disaster areas, what would you like to be in the future? So every child I ask in Gaza, what would you like to be in the future? They say doctor. Um, Except for one child, which speaks about the mental health trauma that you mentioned. He was 11 years old. He was in a displacement school, a school that was converted to a displacement center. And he said, I asked him, what would you like to be in the future? He said, what future? So that kind of shocked me to the
Wow.
core. But I think it's important for us to look for the future and to make sure that the children in Gaza have a future like our children here.
How do you define this for you? Like, what does this mean to you personally? And I know that's kind of a loaded question, but what's your takeaway?
Now, I've been doing this now for 13 years since the crisis started in Syria, in my homeland. And over the past 13 years, I've been in places I've never imagined that I will go to. Bangladesh after the Rohingya genocide, Yemen in the middle of civil war, um, Sierra Leone, an area that is trying to recover from its civil war, Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, Ukraine in the midst of war, and of course, Gaza. So as long as you are in the field, Rush, there's adrenaline rushing into your body. So you are focused on the next patient and the next task and the next trip. And how do you get from point A to point B? So you don't feel anything. And I frankly do not feel scared in the field, especially when you see people around you and children smiling and acting as if things are normal despite of the bombs and the missiles. But we're human and we are affected. So it takes me time to recover after I come back, maybe 3-4 weeks. I meditate, I exercise, my family is very supportive, my wife and children. My partners in practice are very supportive, so that will help.
Thank you, Dr. Sahlul. We appreciate your time and being part of On the Ground with MedGlobal, Episode 1. For more information about MedGlobal, make sure to visit medglobal.org. This is Rush Darwish. Thanks for listening to On the Ground with MedGlobal.